Let's open our Bibles tonight to the book of Esther. I'm going to read the first 8 verses. And I'm going to leave you hanging with the homework tonight. I want you to do something for me between now and next Sunday. And I want to see how your brain works, how you think, and what you would have done had you been in Esther and Mordecai's place. Esther chapter 8, verse 1. On that day did the king Ahasuerus give the house of Haman, the Jews' enemy, unto Esther the queen. And Mordecai came before the king, for Esther had told what he was unto her. And the king took off his ring, which he had taken from Haman, and gave it unto Mordecai. Let that sink in for a minute. And Esther set Mordecai over the house of Haman. And Esther spake yet again before the king, and fell down at his feet, and besought him with tears to put away the mischief of Haman the Agagite and his device that he had devised against the Jews. Then the king held out the golden scepter toward Esther. So Esther arose and stood before the king, and said, If it please the king, and if I have found favor in his sight, and the things seem right before the king, and I be pleasing in his eyes, let it be written to reverse the letters devised by Haman, the son of Hammedatha the Agagite, which he wrote to destroy the Jews which are in all the king's provinces. For how can I endure to see the evil that shall come unto my people? Or how can I endure to see the destruction of my kindred? Then the king Ahasuerus said unto Esther the queen, and to Mordecai the Jew, Behold, I have given Esther the house of Haman, and him they have hanged upon the gallows, because he laid his hands upon the Jews. Write ye also for the Jews, as it liketh you, in the king's name, and seal it with the king's ring. Read this next phrase carefully. For the writing which is written in the king's name and sealed with the king's ring, may no man reverse. Sometimes we don't always get to see the Hamans of our life hanged and destroyed. Sometimes it looks like that we're actually losing. It seems sometimes that the world is winning all the battles, and we as God's people are losing. Have you ever felt like, why bother? It's not going to make any difference anyway. Nothing I can do is going to stop the world. Nothing I can do is going to prevent the wickedness in the world. There's nothing I can do to make things better. So why bother to even try? Last week we saw that Esther's life had been spared. She was safe. Nobody could harm her now that the king had become aware of the wicked plot of Haman that he had approved. She is safe. No harm can come to her. There's nothing that can possibly hurt her. There's no one that can attack her. She is as secure can possibly be. But sometimes we look at the evil around us and we feel like that we are indeed losing. I'm going to read a passage of scripture in Psalm 73. If you want to turn and read with me, I'm going to read most of the chapter. It's a chapter that, if nobody has ever pointed it out, you may think that you're the only one that felt like you were losing. You may think that you're the only one who cares. You're the only one that is standing for truth. Kind of like Elijah did when the angel said, "What are you doing here?" And Elijah said, "They have thrown down your altars, and I alone am the only one standing." And God had to remind Elijah, "No, I've got 7,000 that have not bowed the knee to Baal." I want you to read Psalm 73 to make sure that you read it. I'm going to read it with you. It was written by a man named Asaph, who was one of the song leaders under King David. Very high position, very honored position, singing hymns all day, practicing. And then when your turn came around, you led the singing, you led the choir before the king and all of the other people. But Asaph, that man of God, that song leader under King David, listen at what he wrote. "Truly God is good to Israel, even to such as are of a clean heart. But as for me, this is how I felt. This is how I thought. My feet were almost gone. My steps had well nigh slipped. I was envious at the foolish when I saw the prosperity of the wicked." Before we came here, years before we came here, I sold insurance. You knew that. I knew what I was making, and I knew what some of the other salesmen were making. And they were going out and buying $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 boats. We were right on Lake Cumberland. They were going out and buying big houses. And we looked at my salary, which was very good, but we couldn't afford a $40,000 boat. We couldn't afford some of the things. And it's like, I'm making more than some of them, and we can't afford to do what they are doing. And I thought, here I am trying to serve God, and they are prospering. Until my wife pointed out, we have always, since before we even got married, we have always given a way more than 10%. We have never given 10%. We've always given 15, 20, as high as 30, 40%. And we looked at what we were giving in tithes and offerings, and we could have bought a boat in 1 year and paid for it. See, he became jealous when he saw the prosperity of the wicked. There are no bands in their death, but their strength is firm. They are not in trouble as other men, neither are they plagued like other men. Therefore pride compassed them about as a chain. Violence covereth them as a garment. Their eyes stand out with fatness. They have more than heart could wish. They are corrupt and speak wickedly. Concerning oppression, they speak loftily. They set their mouth against the heavens, and their tongue walketh through the earth. Therefore his people return hither, and waters of a full cup are wrung out to them. Everything they touch seems to go right. And they say, how doth God know? Is there knowledge in the Most High? Behold, they are the ungodly who prosper in the world. They increase in riches. Here comes me and maybe you. Verily, I have washed my heart in vain. I have cleansed my heart in vain and washed my hands in innocency. I've wasted my time serving God. For all the day long have I been plagued. They're enjoying prosperity. They're increasing in riches. Me, all day long, I'm plagued and chastened every morning. Verse 16, when I thought to know this, it was too painful for me. Even thinking about it made me sick. Until I got sick, literally, watching the wicked, immoral, ungodly prosper while I'm struggling. I'm sick. I'm in distress. I'm in tribulation. And it hurt to even think about it until I went into the sanctuary of God. Then understood I therein. Surely thou didst set them in slippery places. Thou casteth them down into destruction. How are they brought into desolation, as in a moment they are utterly consumed with terrors. I'm not going to read the rest of the chapter, but you can begin to understand how Asaph felt. He was constantly in trouble, constantly going in poverty, while the wicked were getting richer and richer. That's how it looked like with Haman. Haman was second only to the king. Haman could have anything he wanted. People literally bowed down and worshiped at his feet. And here's Esther and Mordecai and all the Jews about to be killed. A phrase that I still hear frequently. Well, that just doesn't seem fair. In this life, it isn't fair. That's why Paul wrote, if in this life only we have hope in Christ, we are of all men most miserable. I wonder if that's how Mordecai felt sometimes. Here I served God. I took a stand for what was right. I refused to bow down and worship at his feet. I did what I thought was right, and because of my stand, now every Jew in the nation is about to be killed. Well, let's look at these verses tonight. And I promise I've only got one page of notes. Okay, see, the back is blank. Somebody said, what does that mean? Nothing. But at least I've only got one page of notes. Esther is safe. She has been spared. She has been saved, as it were. Now, it took a lot of very careful planning. It took a lot of prayer. She had to be willing to put her own life on the line to save her life. How far would you go? And I'll come back to this in a bit. How far would you go to save your life from some wicked, mean, vicious person? She risked everything to be saved herself. After she had secured her safety, then the king said, I'm putting you in charge of Haman's entire house. Haman's house is yours. Do with it whatever you want to. You can burn it. You can kill everybody. It's yours. Do what you want to. Anything you want to. You are in charge of Haman's household. I know I say this a lot, but I like to try to imagine how she could have felt and how you and I might have felt. It's like, yes, I'm going to get his wife. I'm going to get his kids. She does kill his kids later, but not now. His entire house now depends on Esther, whose entire family was ready to hang Mordecai just 2 days prior. I can only speak for myself, but I can picture me thinking, oh, I'm going to get even. I'm going to get even with his entire house because of what he tried to do to me. And then the thought hit my mind. I talk to people, and they'll say things like, my sin doesn't affect anybody but me. Have you ever heard somebody say that? Nobody is affected by my sin but me. That's why years ago there was a push. It failed, but they tried to legalize prostitution because they called it, and I'm using their words, a victimless crime. Nobody's hurt. It's two consenting adults. They're not hurting anybody. Why can't it be legal to do whatever they want to? Listen, let me tell you something. Your sin will, you can bet your last dollar, your sin will affect your family, your friends, and other people around you. Well, I'll just kill myself. Oh, please don't. My kids will be better off without me. I don't know why, but it seemed for a long time the only calls I got were attempted suicides or suicides themselves. Time won't permit me to tell of a 16-year-old girl who got mad at her mom. Her mom went to the grocery store, and while mom was at the grocery store, the girl went into her bedroom, hung herself. Mom came home and found her only daughter hanging from the rafters. Here I come. Nobody's affected. Oh, I spent that entire night with the family. I spent that entire night, family blaming themselves. Why didn't I see the signs? Why didn't I do something? Then I was called to a young girl and her small brother came home from school. Mom had gone in the back shed, took a shotgun, put it in her mouth, pulled the trigger, and I was called to try to deal with the kids. Listen, your sin affects everybody. Haman's wife was affected. Haman's sons were affected. And what I really find depressing is that by the time the parents realize they made a mistake, it's usually too late to save the kids. And I don't mean from death. I don't mean salvation. Parents who think that it's not important to bring their kids to church every service, when their kids get grown and want nothing to do with church. I've had those same parents look at me and say, I just don't know where I went wrong. Oh, I can tell you where you went wrong. I did try to tell you when the kids were young. You're seeing, you're now reaping in your kids who want nothing to do with God, want nothing to do with church, want nothing to do with the Bible, because when they were young enough that you could have influenced them, you chose to teach them that church isn't important. Church doesn't matter. They grow up, church doesn't matter. And then the parents, when they get arrested or get drunk, get killed, I just don't know what I did wrong. Haman's sin affected his wife, it affected his kids, it affected all of his friends. They lost a friend. But at least Esther is safe. Now, her safety is secure. What does Esther do next? She brings in Mordecai and says, this is my cousin. He's the man that raised me. And upon hearing that, the king takes the golden ring that he had taken off of Haman and gave it to Mordecai and made Mordecai second only to the king. But the order is still out there to kill all the Jews. It appears from the verses that we read that the king had gone back into his private chambers. Verses 3 and 4 tells us that Esther spake yet again before the king, but this time when she stepped through those doors, she fell down weeping and crying and fell down at the king's feet. How do we know he had gone back into his private quarters? Because once again, she comes through without being asked. She's not invited. He holds out the golden scepter and says, come on in, Esther, what do you need? Then she begins to plead on behalf of her kinfolk. I'm safe. The king has personally guaranteed my safety. But now my heart wants to see my kinfolk saved. My heart wants to see my friends saved. I'm thankful that I'm safe. I'm thankful that my life has been spared. I'm thankful. But oh, let me get to the right verse here. How can I endure to see the evil that shall come unto my people. Esther, you're safe. You're secure. Oh, but you see, the fact that I am safe, how can I endure knowing that I'm saved, but all my family and friends are killed? And so the king gives her the ring and says, write up a new law. Sign it with my ring on how to save your people. But there's only one big problem. The easy solution, in my thinking, is just write a law and says, I hereby invalidate the old law. But the king says, wait a minute, that's not possible. You see, in verse 8, the writing which is written in the king's name and sealed with the king's ring may no man reverse. Not even the king himself can reverse an order that the king signed and sealed. So you've got to figure out how to save your people without reversing the first decree. Now, let me throw some thoughts at you. By the way, just for FYI, Esther chapter 8 and verse 9, which we're not going to read tonight, but verse 9 is the longest verse in the entire Bible. You just learned something tonight. So if we ever have a quiz and I ask what's the longest verse in the Bible, you'll all know Esther 8 and 9. But let's look at ourselves. Most of us, God has saved by his marvelous grace. I've been saved. I've been newborn. I'm going to heaven, and nobody can take that away. I am saved. And for some people, that's all that really matters. I'm going to heaven. That's really all I care about. Esther's life was saved, but her immediate concern was for her family and her friends. I mentioned this morning, and I didn't think about it, but when God saved me, immediately, the day I was saved, I began praying for my brother. I began praying for my cousins. I began praying. Now you got to remember, I was in 2nd or 3rd grade, but I had this little girl. Her dad was a drill sergeant in the Army. She was the cutest little girl you've ever seen. And I kind of liked her, as a 7-year-old. I began praying for Lynn. I began praying for others that I knew were lost. And even today, many of my prayers are consumed with people that you would know. Many of them are here almost every Sunday morning. I start, and Lord, please save so-and-so, and so-and-so, and so-and-so. I'm going to heaven, and I'm thankful that God saved me, but I'm not content. How can I endure knowing that all of my family and friends are going to hell? How can I endure with that? God did save my brother. It was a good while later. God did save Lynn, although her dad was transferred. I have no idea where he was transferred to or anything about him or her. When was the last time that, like Esther, you fell down on your knees and you wept and you cried and said, "Oh, King, I'm safe, but I want my people saved"? When was the last time that you were more concerned about other people being secured, even if it meant risking your life? When we were in Texas, there was a missionary out of a church in Dallas. I heard him preach at different places. But one night, happened to be at a conference or something, and he preached. I don't even remember what country he was a missionary to. It's one of the African countries. I do remember that much. And there were some people there who were determined to wipe out all Christians. And it was dangerous to be on the road, because if they caught you on the road, they would arrest you or sometimes just shoot you right there and kill you. Brother Dearmore was arrested one time. He was taken to the rebel camp. "What are you doing here?" "I'm here to preach the gospel so that people can be saved. We don't like Christians. We kill Christians." And he gave this testimony himself. I heard it myself. They walked up to him with the gun, put it right between his eyes, and pulled the trigger. I mean, he was killed. The gun jammed. The gun jammed. So they unjam it, reload it, put the pistol right between his eyes, and pull the trigger, and it jammed again. They finally said, "The gods are upon this man, let's leave it." A second time, he was out driving in a Jeep through the jungle. They were attacked by the rebels. They shot his Jeep to pieces. They shot a bazooka at his Jeep. They threw hand grenades at his Jeep. They shot at him. And I wished he was still alive so you could hear it. He tells it much better than I do. As he turned his head, they shot his glasses off, shattered his glasses, but missed him. They shot a bazooka turned out to be a dud. They threw grenades. They bounced off the side of the Jeep, and they were duds. But twice, he literally put his life on the line so that those people back in the jungle could hear the gospel. How many of us would have done that? It's like, you know what? I hope God sends somebody to preach to them, but it's not worth my life for them to be saved. Esther said, it is worth my life. If that's what it takes, it's worth my life if it'll mean my people being safe and secured. I wonder sometime, if God doesn't save more people, and I've asked myself this same question dozens of times. At least once or twice a week, I ask myself this same question. Is it because we really don't care if God saves people or not? How far would you go? Now, she risked her life to save her life. How far would she go risking her life a second time to save the lives of her people? Now, here's your assignment for next week. If you need to write it down, write it down. Here is your assignment. See how many ways you can come up with to reverse a law that is irreversible. Can you do that for me? How can you come up with a law to reverse a law that cannot be reversed? I will ask for your papers next week.